Education in the state of Texas. It is about the charter school movement, but more specifically, it is about the Turkish Gulen Harmony schools. We've already told you that that is the largest charter school system in Texas. There's some problems with that already because they have access to tax money and they do not have the same accountability and transparency requirements that public schools that also get our tax money have. For example, those operators are not required to be American citizens. And MerryLynn is going to talk to you about that. MerryLynn, I hope I don't butcher your name. I just always call her MerryLynn. MerryLynn Gerstenschlager, is that pretty close? Was appointed as Texas Eagle Forum's Vice President by National Eagle Forum's founding president, Phyllis Schlafly, in 2009. MerryLynn serves as a full-time volunteer lobbyist for Texas Eagle Forum. She has testified before dozens of legislative committees. Her 2011 lobbying efforts on Turkish charter schools precipitated a legislative investigation of all state charter schools. And I will tell you, if it had not been for MerryLynn and Texas Eagle Forum, the legislature would not be investigating these schools. Would not be investigating these schools if it had not been for her hard work and her commitment. MerryLynn has been an official observer at 17 United Nations conferences. MerryLynn was fighting for the constitutional conservative cause for liberty before most of us ever figured out something was wrong. I've known her for a very long time. She and her family have sacrificed for so many years to call for our elected officials to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. Would you please turn off your cell phones? Make sure we do not distract her, and please give MerryLynn your good attention today. MerryLynn.
Good morning. And thank you very, very much for your warm welcome. I'm especially honored to have been asked to speak to those of you who make up the Tea Party, the grassroots. The name of your group sums it all up so well, for we the people are the grassroots. Too bad most of America doesn't realize what they're missing out on by not being engaged in the political process. However, I cannot badmouth them too much for being apathetic and apolitical. You see, I was happy with my head in concrete for most of my adult life. It wasn't until 19 years ago that I finally started to pay attention to what was happening in America. And now I'm trying to motivate the person I used to be. I also want to congratulate you for taking the time on this beautiful day to come out. And I also want to congratulate people like the Hausers who brought their grandson Vincent here. As you look around and see, there are many people who are well along in years, and it is wonderfully inspiring to me to see young people come alongside when they have so many different interests, and they would take the time to come to hear a guest speaker with a weird last name like Gerstenschlager speak on Turkish charter schools. Now, what is this all about? And so bring your young people along with you. If they can't come, invite them to lunch, take them somewhere, and in some way find the place that lights that spark about America. Had the Tea Party been around when I was a young adult, I don't know if I would have been as adamant about protecting our constitutional republic as much as those of you who call yourselves the grassroots. We the people, Tea Party, I salute you again for your passion to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. This morning I've been invited to tell you a little bit about something new that has the potential to threaten our freedom. I'm going to tell you about some charter schools that have emerged in America since our lives dramatically changed on 9/11. I'm going to talk a lot about Turkey and charter schools that are operated in America primarily by Turkish men who are here on H-1B visas. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my observations during a visit to Turkey, about an investigation of all charter schools that Texas Eagle Forum helped precipitate last legislative session, and I'm going to explain why it is important to pass a law that requires charter operators to be American citizens. And I have to give credit for that charter school investigation also to my dear friend Peyton Wolcott, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her. She tramped the halls, wrote political flyers, testified before committees, made phone calls, sent emails, and worked alongside me throughout last legislative session and ever since. So let's go back to 1996 when I traveled to Turkey at my own expense, along with Texas Eagle Forum President Kathy Adams and former President Pat Carlson, who is also former chairman of the Republican Party in Tarrant County. We went to Istanbul to the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements. Note that I only mention the UN in order to tell you why I went to Turkey. In preparation for my trip, one name kept popping up in all the literature I read about Turkey. For a quick history lesson, you will recall that in the 1920s, after the Ottoman Empire was defeated, a Turkish army officer named Mustafa Ataturk secularized Turkey, and he raised their standard of living when he introduced cultural changes and literacy. He abolished the segregation of men and women. It was very significant that he discarded the Arabic alphabet in favor of Latin letters. Women had the vote by 1932. I read that Ataturk was considered the father of their country, just as George Washington is considered the father of our country. While in Istanbul, I spent a considerable time at a huge NGO forum that ran concurrently with the UN conference. NGO, as you probably know, stands for non-governmental organizations. Think of the Green Agenda, Greenpeace, and the green organizations that push the Green Agenda. They're driving the UN Global Warming Treaty. So there was a big NGO forum there in Istanbul. Booths were set up in a huge old university. I was surprised to see pictures of Ataturk hung on the back walls of these temporary booths, or Scotch tape to card tables in the booths. In the city bazaars, one would see photos of Ataturk hung in merchants' little alcoves. In the city, you would see his photo hung in shop windows. Ataturk was still obviously revered some 70 years after transforming Turkey to a secular society. He established the Republic of Turkey. At the end of this conference, Kathy Adams and I had an opportunity to travel to places such as Cappadocia and the ancient city of Ephesus. One of the things that impressed me was that while Istanbul is a huge, bustling city, the areas surrounding Cappadocia, Ephesus, and many other places were just as desolate, if not more so, than West Texas. And I go out there a lot because my daughter lives in Lubbock, so I know there are lots of desolate places even here in Texas. Now, Turkey is a huge country, and there are plenty of places to get away from it all. Also, there are many natural underground caves in Cappadocia where one could easily hide out if their lives were in danger. We saw many real underground churches in these natural caves that were used way back in ancient times. We even enjoyed dinner and a floor show in a huge underground nightclub/restaurant one night. As I said, plenty of natural underground caves in which to hide if one's life were in danger. I loved Turkey. The people were very nice to us. The food was heart-healthy and delicious. The landscape was a witness of God's creation. All kinds of magnificent architecture in the cities, and ancient biblical cities. Now let's fast forward to the last legislative session when I moved to Austin, lived in an apartment, and was there daily as a full-time volunteer lobbyist for Texas Eagle Forum. I do everything that a paid lobbyist does, except I don't have to register because I don't spend money on any elected officials. I don't take them to lunch, I don't fly them to the Caribbean, I don't take them to play golf. But, and I know that you too are lobbyists, and you probably just don't realize it. When you write an email, make a phone call, send a snail mail, send a fax to an elected official, see them in Kroger's and tell them what you think, you are lobbying. So you too can be, tell your friends that you're a lobbyist, even though it has a really evil connotation. Now, last legislative session, there was a bill that would have allowed charter schools to enjoy school construction bond guarantees by our $25 billion permanent school fund. This is an endowment fund that provides free textbooks for our children and also guarantees public school construction bonds at low interest rates. This bill allowed charter schools to apply for these school construction bond guarantees. We soon learned that 38 of Texas charter campuses are primarily operated by men who have been educated and formerly employed in Turkey. And I have placed a handout on your table, and if you take nothing else home with you today, I hope you'll take this handout with you because it shows a chart that my friend Peyton Wolcott made showing the education and former employment background of some of these Turkish men here on H-1B visas. Please note that not all of our charter schools, of the Harmony charter schools in Texas are operated by Turkish men here on H-1B visas. Some have become American citizens. So be careful. You've been warned twice today about how you speak and communicate with others. It concerned us that none of these charter operators, or most of these charter operators, are not American citizens, as is required of our local school board trustees. We tried to amend the bill to require charter school operators seeking the school bond guarantee to be American citizens. As a result of our efforts, we were vilified by some who called us Islamophobes. That was funny to us because Peyton and I never used the religion or the term Islam in any of our literature, our testimony, or our lobbying efforts. We always referred to them as Turkish charter schools. Even though our efforts to amend the bill failed, we did create awareness among legislators and precipitated an investigation of all charter schools in Texas. You can read more about the Turkish charter schools at the Texas Eagle Forum website, and if you're taking notes, it is www.texaseagle.org. And there are 2 articles there. If you look under Torch, which is our newsletter, if you look under Torch, you can find a May 2012 article by me and a October-November 2011 article by me about the Turkish charter schools. Our efforts in Austin prompted an article by the Austin American Statesman newspaper about how the Turquoise Foundation offered legislators free trips to Turkey. And we saw these people lobbying in offices offering these free trips to Turkey to our legislators. They wrote of how suddenly legislators were rethinking the idea of taking that free trip to Turkey after we circulated flyers showing legislators' tax reports of free trips to Turkey. The New York Times ran a story about the Texas Turkish charter schools in which they linked these schools to a Turkish imam by the name of Fethullah Gulen, who had fled Turkey and sought asylum in the United States in the late 1990s. And in your handout, the first page of your handout, is a graphic written by the New York Times that accompanied their article last year. Gulen had angered the secularist Turkish government because he wanted to return Turkey to an Islamist state. Note that Gulen professes to be a Sufi Muslim, which is considered a moderate form of Islam. He professes, among other things, peace, love, and tolerance. Now, ladies and gentlemen, keep this in mind as I tell you about this imam who was first denied asylum in the United States. Unfortunately, the CIA eventually supported him. He was granted permanent residence in 2006. Although he was eventually exonerated in Turkey, Gulen has continued to live in a heavily guarded compound in Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania, ever since. As a young man, Gulen became a religious leader and then established many schools in Turkey. This is a man who doesn't even have a high school diploma. Some have said he only has a 5th grade education. From Turkey, he expanded his schools into countries that make up the former Soviet Union, the Balkans, and finally, the West. In 2009, the Middle East Quarterly reported that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, quote, characterized Gulen as neither an expert in the field of education nor an educator, but rather as the leader of a large and influential religious and political movement with immense commercial holdings, unquote. As a matter of fact, Gulen is worth at least $25 billion. Some say it is actually $50 billion. Now, you'd have to sell a lot of books to make that kind of money. Where does he obtain his money? I don't know. I can Google his name and find hearsay on the internet, but I don't know how he has acquired all this money. He also has millions of followers, yet Gulen denies that he has any connection to the schools established worldwide. Here in America, Turkish charter school operators are quick to say that they are not affiliated with Gulen, just as they did on a 60 Minutes with Leslie Stahl broadcast last Mother's Day, just a couple of months ago. Did anyone happen to see the broadcast? Please go to 60 Minutes website, CBS 60 Minutes website, and you can see the transcript and possibly the video of that broadcast. Leslie Stahl went to Saylorsburg, tried to interview Gulen, and was told that he was right beyond the door next to which she was standing, but he wouldn't talk to her. What you have to understand is that all charter schools in America are funded with taxpayer dollars. What shocked us was that during the Texas legislative session last year, on January 25th, the Texas Senate passed Senate Resolution 85 that, quote, recognized Fethullah Gulen for his ongoing and inspirational contributions to the promotion of global peace and understanding, unquote. I won't read all of it, but it went on to say, and I quote, that the Senate of the State of Texas 82nd Legislature hereby commend Fethullah Gulen for his dedication to working toward a better world through education, service, tolerance, and the free exchange of ideas, and extend to him best wishes for continued success in all his endeavors, unquote. We were very disappointed to learn that this resolution was co-sponsored by Democrat Senators Eddie Lucio and Letitia Van de Putte, and Republican Senators Troy Fraser, Joan Huffman, and Jane Nelson. I have to give huge credit to a journalist friend of mine, Peyton Wolcott, who helped me in my efforts against this bill. Peyton's website is all about accountability and follow the money, the perfect website for a member of a Tea Party grassroots organization. Unfortunately, this bill about the PSF school bond guarantees passed the legislature, but not without a fight. On the next to the last day of the extra legislative session last year, the House of Representatives refused to support a major budget bill that contained the permanent school fund bond guarantee, unless they were guaranteed that there would be an investigation of the charter schools. Speaker of the House Joe Strauss promised an investigation to the legislators who were resisting, and the budget bill passed when they took an additional vote, along with the PSF construction bond guarantee. At Peyton Wolcott's website, you will learn that here in America, there are at least 120 Turkish charter schools. A little over 10 years ago, there were none. And remember, a little over 10 years ago, the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center were attacked in New York City. I can't give answers to why this coincidence happened, but it did. As a matter of fact, according to a January 4th, 2012 San Antonio News Express article, Harmony's superintendent Soner Tarim reported that Harmony, quote, is on track to enroll 24,000 students by the end of 2012, unquote. Did you get that? The Harmony Charter Schools, as they are named here in Texas, these that are operated mostly by Turkish men here on H-1 visas, hope to have 24,000 kids enrolled in their schools just in the state of Texas by the end of this year. The House Public Education Committee held a public hearing on February 17, 2012, as a part of their charge to investigate all charter schools in Texas. As I told the House Public Education Committee that day, the Harmony Charter Schools emphasize Turkish culture. And that's something I want you to remember. After my testimony, which was still on the record, I just finished my written testimony, which was 3 minutes allotted. They kept me on the hot seat at the microphone for another 9 minutes, which was great, even though it makes you squirm. It gave me an opportunity to give more information about the charter schools. After my testimony, one of the committee members admonished me and told me that I should visit Turkey, that she had been there 2 or 3 times, and that she loved Turkey and their culture. I didn't say this aloud, but I wondered if she was one of those who was taking a free trip to Turkey. I could look at the tax records, but that takes time, and I've been busy doing other things, but I will at one time take the time to investigate that. Now, at the microphone, I told her that I had visited Turkey for 2 weeks in 1996. I also told her that the country had changed and that they didn't have America's best interest in mind, that I had paid my own way. I also stated that the Harmony Charter Schools hold Turkish Olympiads. I suggest that all of you go to the Harmony Charter School websites and take a look at the photos they have posted. There you will see the emphasis on Turkey. The Harmony Charter Schools also help their students finance trips to Turkey. And I know a parent who went to Turkey with her child, and she told me that when they got there, her child had been in a Harmony Charter School. She said when they, in a Turkish charter school in another state. She said that they separated the children from the adults, so they weren't always together, so they don't know what, the parents didn't know what they were telling the children. It was a very loose trip. There was no real published itinerary. And she said after the trip, she took her child out of this Turkish charter school. All the exposure to Turkey in these schools can't help but make these young children sympathetic to Turkey and their way of life. Have you ever seen a child study Australia? I've been there twice. The kids love the cuddly koalas and the little joeys and the wombats and the cute animals, and they're hooked by that, and they develop a love for a country through things like that. So I can't help but think these kids learning about Turkish culture are being sympathetic, learning to be sympathetic to Turkey. As I told the House Public Education Committee on February 17th, I wonder where these children's allegiance will lie. Last summer, the Harmony Charter School of Political Science was opened in Austin, Texas. One wonders how government, American history, the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and other founding documents will be taught in the Harmony School of Political Science in our capital city. The April 4th, 2011 online edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer reported about some WikiLeaks files detailing unease over Turkish H-1B applications and charter schools. Among other things, the WikiLeaks stated that, quote, consular officials have noticed that most of those applicants share a common characteristic. They are generally evasive about their purpose of travel to the United States, unquote. The Turkish charter school operators will say that they cannot get enough qualified American teachers, so they must hire Turkish teachers. While the Turkish charter schools deny that they are affiliated from state to state, an examination of their websites demonstrates that they share a similar template at their school websites. Most have nice, benign-sounding names, such as Dove, Magnolia, Harmony, and Daisy charter schools of science and math. Note that the Royal Islamic Strategic Studies Center placed Gulen 13th on their list of the 500 most influential Muslims in 2010. Don't you think it noteworthy that the 13th most influential Muslim on the planet wanted to return Turkey to Islam and lives on American soil? One has to wonder if Gulen's ideology is having an effect here in America. Make no mistake, while the Turkish charter schools produce students who excel in math and science, we cannot overlook the fact that these schools are run mostly by Turkish men who are here on H-1B visas, while our local public school board members are required to be American citizens. I draw your attention now to a question posed to a candidate by Fox News commentator Bret Baier during one of the presidential debates earlier this year. Baier asked Governor Rick Perry, quote, "Since the Islamist-oriented party took over Turkey, the murder rate of women has increased by 1,400%. Turkey has threatened military force against both Israel and Cyprus. Press freedom has declined to the level of Russia. The Prime Minister has embraced Hamas. Given Turkey's turn, do you believe Turkey still belongs in NATO?" Unquote. Did you hear that? It was a Fox News that said that the Turkish government had been taken over by the Islamists, not MerryLynn Gerstenschlager. Actually, this news story broke last August, but it got little attention. I do know that the BBC and Reuters did cover it. While we'll leave the question about NATO to presidential candidates, I refer all of you to my reference about Mustafa Ataturk, the man who secularized Turkey, raised the standard of living by introducing literacy and education for young girls, and brought respect for women into their culture. Bret Baier highlighted how Turkey has become an oppressive nation. They have taken a step backwards to where women apparently are no longer respected. Hundreds of journalists have been thrown into prison. They have the biggest number of journalists in prison than any other nation right now. While Fethullah Gulen lives in the United States, according to former FBI worker Dr. Paul Williams, Gulen's money controls almost all of the newspapers and television stations in Turkey. He also controls most of the 200,000-member police force. People who have opposed Gulen have been arrested. Gulen must be very happy at the thought of thousands of American children who are probably becoming sympathetic to Turkey and their way of life right here in his own backyard. If his control can reach all across the seas to Turkey, how much easier would it be for him to ask allegiance from the children educated in Turkish charter schools within our borders? The Gulen Institute website states that Gulen's doctors recommended he live in America, where it's peaceful and quiet because of his heart condition and his diabetes. Remember, I told you earlier that there are plenty of peaceful places in Turkey, and there are plenty of natural underground bunkers that Gulen could seek for protection. I ask you, why are millions and millions of our tax dollars paying for Turkish charter schools in our own backyards when Turkey has become so oppressive and aggressive that a presidential candidate is asked whether or not Turkey should be allowed to remain in NATO? We must also keep in mind that other things are happening in Turkey. Just last week, today's Zaman, a Turkish newspaper, reported that Turkish Prime Minister Recep Erdogan has openly invited Fethullah Gulen to come back to Turkey after having lived in America for 13 years. Erdogan did not specifically mention Gulen by name, but made the statement in a speech he delivered during the closing ceremony for the 10th Turkish Olympiads amid a standing ovation from the crowd of over 50,000 people. The Prime Minister said, and I quote, "We want the yearning to end. We want to see those who are abroad and longing for the homeland among us, unquote. Some have said that Gulen will not return to Turkey because he would be in competition with the prime minister for the top spot. However, if he remains in America, he can still maintain his international status as a top Muslim cleric. I recently heard that Gulen plans to return to Turkey within the next month. Only time will tell. It was written that he cried as he told that he would like to, when he dies, be buried next to his mother back in his homeland of Turkey. For those doubters who think that things haven't changed in Turkey, I ask you to think back to my mention of Ataturk. Remember how I told you that many Turks consider him the father of their country? Well, the Turkish Hurriyet News reported just last week on June 15th that Turkey's first coin without Ataturk is now in use. The Turkish Mint has distributed the Republic's first coins not to feature Ataturk's picture on either of its sides. The coins were made as souvenirs for the 10th anniversary of the Turkish Olympics. This is where thousands of children have participated in these Olympics. In the past, other coins have been minted as souvenirs, but this is the first time the coins without Ataturk's image have been put into circulation. So they're not just souvenir coins. They are being used by the population in Turkey. Could this be another sign that secular Turkey is about to end? Remember, it was Ataturk who secularized Turkey after the Ottoman Empire was defeated. It was Fethullah Gulen who fled Turkey for America because he was being charged with wanting to return Turkey to an Islamist state. He has since been exonerated in Turkey. Their prime minister has been arresting journalists and anyone who would oppose Fethullah Gulen. And recently, the prime minister publicly suggested that Gulen return to his homeland. America is waking up to Fethullah Gulen. Remember the 60 Minutes broadcast I mentioned a few minutes ago? And how some tie him to the Turkish charter schools? We cannot ignore this huge issue. At the Republican State Convention 2 weeks ago, the party platform was printed with a resolution to require all charter operators to be American citizens. All this to say that people are waking up and the Turkish charter schools are being exposed. I'm proud to say that Texas Eagle Forum initiated a resolution requiring charter operators to be American citizens, and many people took those to their precinct conventions and passed them at their precinct conventions. They went on and were approved at the state, county, or senatorial county convention and sent on up to the platform committee at the state Republican convention. Unfortunately, I had to go out of town on a family emergency just before the convention began, so I couldn't go and testify before the platform committee and ask them to support that resolution. And but I did get home in time. My sister-in-law miraculously took a turn for the better, and I was able to come home and attend the state Republican convention. But when the printed party platform was distributed among all of the delegates and alternate delegates, there was an error in that resolution. And I will just give God all the glory for giving me the opportunity to go to the microphone with thousands of people in the arena and offer an amendment to correct the resolution that would now require charter operators to be American citizens. So while God closed the door where I couldn't testify before a small committee on this resolution, He gave me something much bigger, and I give Him the glory for being able to educate an audience of thousands of people on this very important issue. So if you have a printed copy, if you went to the convention or you see a printed copy that came from the convention of the party platform, note that on page 13 at the bottom, that is incorrect, and go to the Republican Party website, or I think Joanne will provide you with a copy of the actual platform. As I draw to a close, I'd like to offer some specific things that you can do to help in this effort. First, follow Michigan's excellent example and ask your state representative and your state senator to pass legislation to require all charter operators to be American citizens. Second, visit Peyton Wolcott GAWTP.com. And there is a third page on your handout on your table, and it has a list of resources I've prepared for you, and Peyton Wolcott's website is listed there. At her website, be sure to view the student video, A Changed Muslim. Read Peyton's storyboards about the video and a possible reference to jihad. This video was made by a student in a Harmony Charter School in Houston. Read lots more about Turkish charter schools. Third, take our friend David Barton's suggestion when speaking in public. Think biblically, but speak secularly. And actually, David has a whole tape on this that you can purchase through Wall Builders, his organization. And last, do a Google search of Fethullah Gulen and learn all you can about this Muslim who wants to change the world to a new world Islamist state. As grassroots activists, you have a much better understanding than the average citizen does of how important it is to protect our Constitution. The last thought I want to leave you with is that our local school board members must be American citizens, and they take an oath to uphold, support, and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Remember, our charter operators do not have to be American citizens. This is not just about Turkish charter operators. Not all nations have America's best interests in mind. I hope that the Grassroots America, We the People Tea Party, will do what you can to see that our charter schools must meet the same standards as our local school board trustees. Our charter operators do not have to be American citizens. Therefore, they do not pledge to protect and defend our Constitution. And I hope that you will help us end this double standard. Thank you very much for your attention.
Am I on? Are you ready for some questions?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the status of the investigation in the Texas Congress?
I assume that the person who wrote that question said in the Texas legislature. I do not know. Originally, the press reported that the San Antonio News Express reported online that Representative Chuck Hobson, who is chairman of the House General Investigating and Ethics Committee, he was quoted as saying that his committee was going to investigate the charter schools. However, when the interim charge came out by Speaker of the House Joe Strauss, this interim committee investigation was assigned to the House Public Education Committee. And I can find nothing on the internet that says Chuck Hobson's committee is going to investigate this. I don't know why that change was made. Representative Rob Eisler is the chairman of the House Public Education Committee, and he conducted that hearing. As I say, I attended and testified. There were mostly people there telling how wonderful our charter schools are. And I was approached by people afterwards from the Harmony schools, and I was invited to come. I've been invited by other people to go and visit their schools. But like Joanne doesn't want to go and talk to Mother Earth magazine, I don't want to go and visit the Harmony charter schools. And the reason is, if you go to their websites, you'll see lots of pictures of people visiting their schools. And there's their school logo on the wall behind them, the school administrators, and smiling visitors. Well, if my picture were there at the Harmony website, it would look as if Texas Eagle Forum and MerryLynn Gerstenschlager endorsed the Harmony schools. I would be used as their pawn, and I refuse to do that. And I'm sure that they would prepare their school just as I do when I'm going to have a guest in my home. I let them see only what I want them to see. I let the dust bunnies hide under the bed, quietly waiting for me to come and attack them later. So the investigation, I think, it appears that this investigation was only done to pat our heads and make it look as if they are doing something about this. I have been told that the federal government is investigating the use of public funds, and also the Austin American Statesman reported several months ago that the Texas Education Agency, or the TEA as we know it, is investigating the use of some of these funds for our Harmony charter schools in Texas. There are things going on behind the scenes. I know some people who are gathering a lot of information, and they have some great information. They're just not finished with their own private investigation, and that will be brought forward when the time is right.
What was Governor Perry's answer to Brett Baer's question?
Well, I'll first say this. When I first found what was happening in our public schools 19 years ago, I went to two friends and said, would you pray with me? There's something bad going on in our public local schools, and I don't want to fight City Hall. And I bawled my eyes out and prayed with these ladies for 2 hours. I felt like they threw me on the floor and guarded the door so I couldn't leave. And I said, I don't want to fight City Hall because I have a bad memory, I hate conflict, and I want people to like me. With that being said, I don't really remember everything Governor Perry said, but he did say that he was in the military based in Turkey, and he lived there as a part of the U.S. Air Force, and he said that Turkey has radically changed since he was there during his military service. And he would look very hard into any country that was not America's friend. If anybody would like that video of that question to Governor Perry, I have it on file at home, and I can email it to you. I think it's posted at YouTube, I'm not sure, but I can send it to you. Pick up a copy of my card. My email address is on my card. There are plenty of them I see on tables. And send me an email and ask me to send that to you, and I can send it so you can hear Governor Perry's own words.
Who is the best contact, both state and federally, to request changes?
Your state representative and your state senator.
Do you know why why George W. Bush advisor Karen Myers, isn't that Karen Hughes, has taken on the task of promoting Islamic education in Texas?
Well, I think that's all about the money. Karen Hughes, as you know, is a very good friend of President George W. Bush, and also our former governor, George W. Bush. And she works for an advertising firm called Burstyn Marsteller. And you can find a link at Peyton Wilcott's website and see a little video of Karen Hughes speaking, and she's working for them. That's a way for her to make a living. I will make no excuses for her. People look at the Harmony Charter Schools as a wonderful thing because they produce excellent math and science students. They brag about a 100% graduation rate, 0% dropout rate. Well, if you look at the resource sheet I gave you, there is a website for a Dr. Ed Fuller. He is not a conservative. Go to his website that I've listed on your handout, and he will show you how their graduation rate of 100% graduation rate is tweaked. They fudge a little bit on it. So you might learn more there.
Imagine that.
Since these charter schools appear to be Islamic schools, how does the legislature justify giving them tax money?
Well, let's use our deductive reasoning. All right, if these people who are operating these schools are from Turkey, and many people who live in Turkey or who are native to Turkey are Muslims, we would assume that Muslims are operating our charter schools, or many of them are Muslims. All right? Well, we might think that they are promoting Muslim religion or Islam in their schools. I have not been able to prove that. You can find hearsay about that on the internet. All I can deduct is that people are afraid to come forward and talk about it, because some people have contacted me by email, but when I say, let's meet for coffee, for a friendly cup of coffee so you can tell me more, they vanish. So right now that is hearsay. That is why I do not say that they are teaching Islam or religion in these schools, because I cannot prove it. I can show that the New York Times, in their graphic, connected the Harmony Charter Schools in Texas to this imam by the name of Fethullah Gulen. That the New York Times did, I didn't do. But I do not say that they are, I never have said, as I said in my speech, and I'll reiterate, I've never said that they teach religion in these schools. The only example comes even close is that video, A Changed Muslim, that I just suggested that you view. But does that answer the question? Who asked the question?
Did it answer the question? Okay,
was that a satisfactory answer?
What is the demographics of students attending these schools, which persuades the population of these schools?
That's an excellent question. Many of these children, the charter schools are public schools. Actually, Harmony wants their schools to be known as public schools rather than charter schools. But charter schools are public schools because they're paid for with public money. Now, many of these children are from socioeconomically depressed neighborhoods. Many of them are poor children, and so their parents are taking them out of the public schools in maybe a big city area like Houston or Dallas and putting them into these schools. And I've met some, in giving these speeches throughout the state, some very conservative people have come up to me and have been very offended, and you might be sitting, there might be some of you sitting in this audience today who might want to come up to me afterwards and say, I have a child in these schools or a grandchild, and they are doing stellar work there. My attack is not on their academic education. My attack is on the fact that we have a double standard. Our charter operators don't have to be American citizens, and yet the equivalent, our school board trustees have to be American citizens. I could change that and say, if you don't think that our charter operators should be American citizens, then would you drop the requirement that our local school board trustees drop the requirement that they be American citizens?
Do these charter schools have a board? Is the curriculum online and approved by the Texas Department of Education? Can any Texas child attend? And what about the prayers required at this school?
That's all excellent questions. These children must follow the same curriculum that we follow in our public schools. They still take the state assessment test that was the TAX, and now it's the STAR, and of course exams that are being merged into or replacing our TAX test. So they have to study the same things. We have a lot of American teachers in these schools. We have American principals and administrators. It's the charter operator. It's the person who goes before the State Board of Education, fills out a lot of paperwork and says, I want to operate a charter school. And once you get okay from the State Board of Education, which is an elected body, 15 members, as you know, once they get the approval to open a charter school, they can open as many campuses as they want. So you will hear that Harmony has 36 charter schools, but they have 38 charter campuses. Think of a charter school having children, all right, as one friend puts it. As far as prayers, I don't know that anybody is praying anything other. I would assume if you have Islam is teaching school there, and they're required to pray according to their religion so many times a day. Now, maybe they do that, maybe they skip that. I have no idea of who's praying in their schools, and I don't know what prayers they're saying.
This is our final question. Is there a bill prepared for filing in the next legislature for a law requiring charter school founders to be U.S. citizens? Who is the sponsor?
I wish I could say there is someone, but I have no idea of anyone who is writing this language. I just know that should a bill be introduced in January when the legislative session opens in 2013, that there will be a great deal of opposition to it, because we met all of that opposition in the last session. And if you go to Peyton Wolcott's website, you will see how much money, she accounts and shows how much money legislators received in campaign contributions from the Texas Association of Charter Schools. And the Harmony schools are members of the Texas Association of Charter Schools. You can also look at the House Education Committee and the Senate Education Committee, and Peyton shows how some, not all, but some of those members received campaign contributions from the charter school lobby. There's a lot of money behind it, and there's also a big push for it. And their banner that they carry is, we produce excellent math and science students. Look at our accolades, look at our trophies. Why are you attacking us? So they can't, back to the facts, I use facts. And that's what I lobbied with, were facts. I couldn't prove the religion thing, and so I never went there. I thank you very, very much for all of your attendance and for your great questions and for your attention. And thank you again. If I can find a legislator who will carry a bill such as this, I will support it, and Texas Eagle Forum will let you know about it. So thank you again.
Ladies and gentlemen, MerryLynn Gerstenschlager.